Well, good morning. I'm not Joe Bo, so you don't get a 2-minute warning. You just get to start. I'm also not John. I'm just using this so I don't have to learn new technology. It's good to see everyone this morning. Thankful for the baptism that we had this morning. If you haven't met Freddie is a very nice, very genuine young man. Please welcome him. Please encourage him. As John talked this morning, many times we see people up here getting baptized, and we have a duty to them to help them, to assist them, to be there for them. Many times we applaud the baptism and we kind of go on with our usual things, and we forget that they need us just as much as they need God in many ways. They need to see in us God, and they need to see the example and the support that He would have us to give Him. So please do that if you haven't already. Let's open our Bibles to Luke chapter 16. We've in the senior class, which by the color of my hair I do qualify for. We've been going through Luke for the past 4 or 5 months. As you can see, we've gotten all the way to chapter 16. There's a lot of things in Luke, a lot of good message there in the way that Luke presents things and the way that Luke shows Jesus to us. But we're going to begin with chapter 16. For those who weren't in the class last week, I want to give a little bit of context. Last week we talked about the prodigal son, and I think all of us in here are familiar with that parable or that story that Jesus told about the son who felt like he was ready to go out on his own, that he was ready to get the inheritance from his father and go out on his own. We talked last week about the different attitudes in that story. The attitude of the son who got half of the inheritance even though he really wasn't entitled to half of it. But his father didn't question whether he was ready for it. He didn't question whether he should give it to him. The son asked for it, the father gave it to him. The son very soon was regretful of his choice. He regretted the way that he had squandered the inheritance, the way that he was living. He started to long to be home. And we talked about how that shows us in many ways. When we get blessings from God, and it's up to us to use them wisely. And when we don't use them wisely, if we're truly of a heart that wants to serve God, we're sorry for that. And we want to go back to where we were before. We talked about the father's attitude toward him when he came back. He didn't chastise him for the way that he had lived. He didn't say, you've squandered half of the inheritance, what's wrong with you? He welcomed him back. He celebrated the fact that he came back. And then we looked at the brother and the example that we have from him, and that the brother was resentful. The brother had never left. He had never made the choice to take his half of the inheritance and leave and do as he wanted. But he was resentful of the brother who had done so. Many times as Christians, when we see someone come back who's kind of wandered away, sometimes we can be a little bit resentful toward them. And we talked last week about how we're not to do that. We're to be as welcoming as the father was in this example to the son who has returned. And all of it points to God and the way God is with us. And the reason I wanted to bring that up is the beginning of chapter 16, Jesus gives the parable of the shrewd manager. And when we look through here, or when we read through this, we'll see some similarities to the parable of the prodigal son in the way that people behave with things that have been entrusted to them or that they've been blessed with. Our class is very interactive, and so I welcome any questions, any comments, any thoughts that we have as we go along through here. I get tired of hearing me talk. I'm sure you get tired of hearing me talk. It's good for us to interact. It's good for us to share. And it's good for us to talk as a group about these things as we go through, because we're all still learning our way as we read through here. And so, again, please don't be shy if you have a comment. Don't be shy if you have a question. And speak up if you wish. So chapter 16 begins. Jesus told his disciples, "A rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possession. So he called him in and asked him, 'What is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management, because you cannot be manager any longer.' The manager said to himself, 'What shall I do now? My master is taking away my job. I'm not strong enough to dig, and I'm ashamed to beg. I know what I'll do, so that when I lose my job here, people will welcome me into their houses.' So he called in each of his master's debtors. He asked the first, 'How much do you owe my master?' 800 gallons of olive oil,' he replied. The manager told him, 'Take your bill, sit down quickly, and make it 400. Then he asked the second, 'And how much do you owe?' 1,000 bushels of wheat,' he replied. He told him, 'Take your bill and make it 800. The master commended the dishonest manager because he had acted shrewdly. For the people of this world are more shrewd in dealing with their own kind than are the people of the light. I tell you, use worldly wealth to gain friends for yourself, so that when it is gone, you will be welcomed into eternal dwellings.'" Anyone have any thoughts about what we read here? Here this manager works for the master. The money that he collects, the debt that he collects, really belongs to the master. He's obviously been dishonest. He's taken from the master what belongs to the master. But then he takes it upon himself to reduce the debts of the people that owe the master money. Was that his money to give back? No. We wouldn't think so. Jewish law or Mosaic law prohibited charging interest to fellow Jews. And so many times, in a way to circumvent that and still make a little bit of money for themselves, these people would increase the debt that was owed. Really, it's not much different than charging interest to your fellow Jews, but in their mind, if the debt was higher and the master got what was due him, there's a little bit for me too. Maybe he just gave back what he was overcharging and reduced it down to what they really did owe. We don't know. Doesn't seem real honest to give away somebody else's money, but I'm curious if there's any thoughts out there of what this is talking about. Right. Right. Shrewd is a worldly term. It's not. We don't talk about shrewdness in the attributes of a Christian or how God would have us to be or the examples that Jesus gave. Any other thoughts? Because, like I said, this isn't an easy thing to understand. Sandy. Say that again, I'm sorry? Good. What does anyone else think? Being prepared. He's losing his job. He's losing his means of making a living, whether it's honest or not. He is losing his job. And so he pivots to, instead of pleasing the master, pleasing the people that he's collecting from so that he's making friends. And Jesus says that's the people of the world are better at dealing with each other in this way, or that shrewdness, or his shrewdness endeared him to the other people. So he was prepared because he couldn't think of any other way that he could make a living. So that is something that we could get from this, perhaps from a worldly perspective. Anyone else? Yeah, and I think that's really the real message here. If we think about the way Jesus spoke in parables, or the way Jesus taught people through parables, there was always a meaning there that he was guiding them toward that perhaps was different than the understanding of the audience prior to Jesus talking to them about this. I think the real message here is if we are entrusted with something, we're to use it to benefit others. If God blesses us with wealth, we should use that to help other people. In this case, this manager was really helping himself, and that was really his focus, but Jesus was able to take that example of someone who was kind of looking out for themselves and looking to recover or to be able to continue to make a living, even though he did it in a way that Jesus characterized as shrewd, which, like I said, isn't necessarily the way that we should behave. But the real message here is if you have the ability to help other people, because that in turn helps you and it's looked favorably upon by God. Anyone else have anything that they get out of this? Possibly. Yeah. I think we're all kind of in agreement that, that's the message here. It's an interesting way to put it, or it's an interesting way to teach it. To me, it's not kind of taking something where you made a mistake and trying to make it right. In this case, he was looking out for himself more than others. but by relieving the burden on other people, then he engendered some goodwill toward him. Again, I think, if we're going to come away with something that out of this, it is that what we have isn't ours, and it's to be used to help other people. I don't know. That's just what I come away with. So. Yeah. Yeah. So continuing on with verse 10, whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much. And whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. Is that true? I think we can all think of examples of that. If you have very little to begin with and you're already dishonest, when you get more, you're probably going to be even more dishonest, right? Or the temptation will be there to be even more dishonest and to gain more for yourself. That's looking at it from a worldly perspective, monetary. When Jesus says this, he's not necessarily talking about money. He's not necessarily talking about worldly blessings or worldly income or things that the world would value. Think about this from a Christian perspective. Whoever can be trusted with very little can also be trusted with much, and whoever is dishonest with very little will also be dishonest with much. I think most of us in this room, if we compare ourselves to other people, we probably think we have very little compared to some. We look at the lifestyles that people have that have a lot of money, and it's very different than ours. Not necessarily better, but it's different, and I think we can all understand that. But think about talents that you get from God. It's not just money, it's not just tangible wealth, but think about things that you've been entrusted with. Maybe you're one that can easily show love to someone or can easily show support to someone who's needing help. And maybe it's on a one-on-one kind of a thing, and you feel like, okay, I'm only doing a little, I only have a little, but I'm going to help this person. By doing that, you may see that ability that you have grow. You may see that you're able to help more people than just one person. When we think about what we've been entrusted with, it isn't just material. It isn't just a spiritual lesson. We've been entrusted with taking the gospel to others, to teaching other people, to, just like we talked about with Freddie, to encourage, to continue that walk. Those are things that we've been entrusted with as well. It's not just things that we have in our pocket, it's stuff that we have in our heart or in things that we've been motivated to want to do for other people. I'd like to see if there's any thoughts on that. When Jesus says, if you're entrusted with a little and you're honest, you'll be honest if you're entrusted with much. What's the real message there that he's saying, and how does that tie in to what this manager did? Anyone? Yes? Yep, I think you got it. If the focus is ourselves and the focus is getting things for us, we're being dishonest with what we've already been entrusted with. But if our attitude is, you know, Lord, you've blessed me with this much, I can do this for somebody, and you continually do that, you may find yourself blessed with even more to be able to do even more for more people. But if your attitude is the other way around, where I'm going to hoard whatever I have because I only have a little, you're probably just going to stay with that little. And I think that's what Jesus is saying here, is have your focus on other people. Have your focus on what you can do for God with what he gives you, rather than keeping it all for yourself and hoping for more. Right, right. Yeah, yeah. And that's the heart that we're supposed to have anyway. Whether we have, if you want to look at it from a worldly view, whether we have a little business or we have a big business, what's our motivation? What's what drives us to want to do more? Is it to get more for ourselves, or is it to be able to do more for others? And like I said, I think that goes beyond money. I think it goes to abilities, and I think it goes to attitudes just as much as what we can kind of relate to money in this. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yes, it can. Yep. To the audience here. lost their way a little bit about how they were to be with people. And if you have not been trustworthy with someone else's property, who will give you property of your own? No servant can serve two masters. Either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. The Pharisees, who loved money, heard all this and were sneering at Jesus. He said to them, "You are the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of men, but God knows your hearts. What is highly valued among men is detestable in God's sight." Goes to what you were saying about spiritual gifts. Goes to what you were saying about, being able to, if you do well with your small business, you might get blessed with more to be able to help more people. The Pharisees' focus was on what the people thought of them. Jesus is telling them that you're the ones who justify yourselves in the eyes of men. Think about those who are humble and giving, like you talked about, Angel, the people who are humble, who have a lot but help other people and don't seek any attention for it. God knows. God knows what you're doing with what he's given you. God knows how you're using what you've been blessed with to help him bless others. By the same token, if you're only looking to money and wealth and power are highly valued in the world. Not highly valued in the kingdom, right? I think we could all agree that that's not the focus that we are to have. But you look at people who look to impress other people or look to have people look upon them as being a little bit higher than other people. That's their reward. If we are humble, and if we what we do to other people, not seeking that's what separates us from the world in our attitude. We're not looking to make things better for ourselves. We're looking to make things better for others, or to help others to see God through how we behave with what we have. And I know there's got to be some thoughts on that, because we see the opposite of that around us every day. Every day. So again, I'm curious if anyone else has any thoughts on that. Or have we pretty well exhausted this? Mm-hmm. Yep. It is. And humility isn't valued in the world. Every once in a while you'll see someone praised for being humble, for not, boasting about what they have. But yet you question the motivation of what they're doing, whether it's really true humility or, just trying to appear that way. God knows whether you're truly humble and truly thankful for what you have and what you're able to do versus what other people think of you. and our focus needs to be on pleasing Him, not pleasing others so that others will look upon us favorably. We want to please Him so that He looks upon us favorably. Again, if you're truly a humble person, you're not going to be a very popular with the world or popular with the other people in that same situation as you that have a lot of things. It's all in our focus on who we want to please and how we want to use what we've been blessed with. And I think that's what goes along or goes through all of this. Again, no matter what you have, be honest and trustworthy with it, and do what you can with what you have. Sandy. Yep. Yep. You're weak or a slacker, or you're not very motivated to be all that you can be. That would be the world's message, to us, and we know that all that we can be is in Jesus, and not in what we do or in what we think or in what we project ourselves to be. I'd rather be on this side, I think. I'd rather be the one that's trusted with little and tries to do the best I can with what I have. And I think if everyone in this room agrees, or we probably wouldn't be here this morning. We'd be out trying to make more money, or we'd be out trying to impress somebody with what we have. It does make you humble. Jesus talked about those who are poor in spirit, that they're blessed or that they're happy when we look at the Beatitudes. Those who are not poor in spirit, or who are very prideful and very driven by what the world would consider success, are probably some of the most miserable people that you'll ever come across if you really talk to them. It's never enough. If we're truly using what God has given us for His glory, then that pride is defeated, and we're not feeding that ego. We're feeding what we should be feeding. Right.
But still, wherever you're at in your life, your testimony is going to be able to help somebody else.
Yeah.
And continue to help somebody, helping others. We'll build each other up. We'll build others up. Mm-hmm. And that increases on all of us, our humility and our glorification of God.
It does, and thank you, Greg. It ties back into what we started here when the manager was relieving the burden on other people so that they would be helpful to him, in his need and the fact that he was losing his job. People or kind of ignores other people's needs, they're probably not going to be there for us. The world won't be there for you no matter what. But if we're focused on others in the kingdom will be there for us.
I just want to say, you were talking about the Beatitudes, it talks about the poor in spirit. It says, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven.
Exactly. And that's that. Jesus lived that. Jesus lived and modeled poor in spirit. He was the Son of God. Think about all of the power that he had when he healed the sick, or when he cured those who had never walked. He didn't say, "Look what I did." And if anybody had the right to do so, it was him. And if he could model humility, all that he had, it should be pretty easy for us to do it. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yes.
We got to be humble in spirit. Even though we have everything we need, and even though we help others, that's not the humbleness that he's talking about.
Right.
He's talking about the humbleness for him, the need for him.
Yeah.
Put him first in our lives.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's right.
Everybody does that. We have people not even Christians doing that.
Yep.
And what did Jesus say about that? He said, we recognize you by your fruit.
Yep.
In Matthew chapter 7, verse 21. Everybody may say, Lord, Lord, and doing all these things, everybody's saying, I'm helping out, giving to the need, and doing that. That's what Jesus is looking for.
Yep. Even that statement is self-serving. We did all these things in your name. The subject of that sentence is we. The subject isn't your name. And so it all has to do with our focus, whether we're focused on our own good or whether we're focused on others' good in the way that Jesus would have us to be focused on that. Any thoughts before we close? Anyone else? Right. If the manager had been honest from the beginning, if he had given to the master what belonged to the master, if he had only charged the people what they really owed, there wouldn't have been any need to be shrewd or to pivot to try to get yourself out of a hole. And that's really what Jesus is saying here. Be honest with what you have. Be honest in what you do. Think of others more highly than yourself, and think of God higher than anything. Sandy, you get to close. Yep. Yep. Dishonesty isn't dependent on what you have or what you're trying to get. Dishonesty is dishonesty, and honesty is honesty. And if we're honest with ourselves and we're honest and humble, love we have for each other, and we're thankful for being able to come together and to study your word and to learn more about you and learn more about how you would have us to be. And Lord, may we always be keeping our eyes on you. May we always be focused on furthering your kingdom rather than building our own. In Jesus' name, amen.